Hi.
Okay.
Log in again? Okay, we're good. Okay, so let me log in again. I think we're all here, right? Okay, we're ready? Perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we apologize, we had a little just difficulties with our translator, but now we have the interpreter that's online. So if that is needed, please know that we do have an interpreter for those individuals that who need the assistance. We want to make sure that everybody's able to listen in and also provide feedback in their own language as well. So with that, we will then move forward with, we're at the point of the presentation by Community and Economic Development and City Manager. So I will turn it over to our City Manager, Megan Hunter.
So, good evening, Council. I just wanted to go over the agenda for tonight. We are gonna introduce you in a minute to the developer, but I did want quickly for staff to introduce themselves. Beatrice, if you want to start.
Yeah, I can start. So I'm Beatrice Trujillo, I'm the Community and Economic Development Director, and I can pass it on to Ariane.
Hi, good afternoon, Council. I am the senior planner for the city.
And then Andrea.
I'm Brianna Valente, I'm the Community and Economic Development Administrative Secretary.
Great, thank you. And then maybe I'll turn it to the team on a Zoom, starting with Mike, the city attorney. Mike, if you wanted to.
Yes, there we go. Yes, I'm Mike Rodriguez, city attorney. I'm on Zoom this evening.
And then Don. If you wanted to.
Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm Don Wilcox, Public Works Director and City Engineer for the City of Soledad.
And then I will also introduce Ron Sissom, who's our consultant helping us.
You're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Ron.
Why 99 out of 100 times, right? Anyway, good evening, everybody. Nice to be here. Ron Sissom with the EMC Planning Group. We are assisting Megan and her staff with the implementation tasks for Miramonte.
And then Lee, you wanted to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. This is Laith Aga. I'm project manager for the Miramonte subdivision. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have been invited and to be able to participate in tonight's event.
Great. Leith, I didn't know if there was any of your technical folks online.
Technical folks, I can have Arminta join. She is on call.
Okay,
So that there was confusion about that. That's why I was asking about Michael or Ron to participate. But I can definitely reach out to Arminta if that helps.
sure, I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
Great.
Can
So,
you do that quickly?
Ariana is gonna give a project overview, but I just wanted to, set the purpose of this meeting in agenda. So, obviously we have council members who are newer, and are just joining and learning about Miramonte, and folks who've been here a little bit longer. The purpose of this meeting is to make sure that everyone is on the same page, to provide you an update of where we are. We will be answering questions, but this is really not the time to dive into direction because a lot of that has to occur under a public hearing, and this has not been, this is not a public hearing. That will come a little bit later. So right now is really just information and answering questions to help everyone get up to speed and to, like I said, give you a quick update on where we are. Just to frame this a little bit, this project has been in the works for about 20 years. It is highly technical. It's involved a lot of technical work. And the city has already, which Ariana will talk a little bit more about, but the city has already adopted the vesting tentative track map, certified the EIR, approved a specific plan. We've submitted our application to LAFCO. LAFCO's conditionally approved the specific plan contingent on the completing the agricultural easements. And really, we're at a point where we're looking more at the development agreement, which will help kind of discuss how the infrastructure, which is already part of the environmental review document and has already been certified, will be implemented in some of the other things that are in this specific plan. So Ariana is going to go over some of that, but I just wanted to let you all know that you're coming in sort of at the tail end of the process, which I know is really hard. And there are some, things you will have an ability to decide on, but there are some things that have already been approved. So we're trying not to unwind what has been done, but kind of move forward in a way. And of course, like I said, there are some pieces that Ariana is going to discuss where you will have an ability to make decisions. And there are some things that have already been decided before. So with that, I'll let Ariana kind of, because I think she'll get into like the roles and the status and it'll answer a lot more questions. I just wanted to kind of preface that a little bit as we move on to the presentation.
Megan, and then I just want to, if I can interject, because I also want to make sure that we point out that, especially because I think for me, I've been involved in the project a lot longer than some of the council members that are here. But I do want to point out that at least for me, because I've been waiting for this part of the project. And what I was told several years ago was, this is the part of the project that we do have a say. And where we can, part of the development agreement as we move forward is something that the council does have, that does have control, or not necessarily control, but does have a say. And I want to make sure that's clear. So as we move forward, I mean, just the clarity of where we're at now, what we can do. Because I want to make sure that's clear, at least from my understanding.
For
of being
sure.
part of the project, because I get it that some things were already approved, but I think the project is pretty massive and there's still things that we can do. And how can we do those?
Yeah, for sure. And I think our goal is to really educate everyone to make sure we are clear on what has been done and what is still left to be done. And as I mentioned before, the development agreement is something that will come back to the council for decision. So.
All right, with that, we'll transition over to the agenda and the project description of the project. Again, this presentation is about the Miramonte specific plan area. It's composed of 647 acres, development east of Soledad. The slides are also printed for the council to follow and make notes if needed, but the presentation is also on Zoom for those that are joining virtually. The specific plan is currently projecting 2,392 homes and is provided 100,000 square feet of commercial space. It proposes a mix of uses to be developed on currently undeveloped land designated to, for the future build out of the city of Soledad in conformance with the 2005 general plan. So we'll focus a little bit more of what the specific plan is and what the objectives of that is, but ultimately is to also comply with our policies that have been adopted and we're currently enforcing through the 2005 general plan. Next slide, please. This is a brief history and timeline of the project. As Megan mentioned, this project has been ongoing for many years. In 2010, the project was proposed as 920 acres to the city council. And then it was denied at that point, and the project developer came back in 2016 to propose 647 acres. At that point, direction was given by the council to move forward. And in 2018, a vesting tentative map was approved by the city. And we'll get into the specifics of what a vesting tentative map is, just to make that understanding later on in the presentation. In 2018, the specific plan was approved as well in November. And the specific plan pretty much guides this the development and the project itself as a whole. After we're working with implementation and creating the approval from the city council, we have to work with outside agencies, in this case, LAFCO, which is the land use agency that regulates land use outside of city limits within county. And in 2022, LAFCO conditionally approved the annexation in December. And the last remaining items, the developer is responsible for, as Megan mentioned, the agricultural conservation easement, which again, we'll touch on throughout the presentation. In August of 2023, the developer submitted multiple items to the city to review. One of them included the development agreement, which is really the guiding document for the project as well, that will lock in a lot of the items and that will be reviewed by council and approved by the city council. And then in March of 2025, which is now, we're conducting this workshop to really understand and provide the background of Miramonte, where it's at, what is staff working on, and what can the council expect to see forthcoming within the next 6 months to a year. Next slide, please. So now that we touched on a brief history of the project, we'll be touching on what a specific plan is. Again, the specific plan is a detailed planning document that really guides the development of the city. And the purpose is to align with the city goals and again, the general plan. This implements the vision of what we want to see, including policies, programs, development standards, design guidelines within a specific plan area. Specific plans must be consistent with applicable elements, again, of the general plan, which is the guiding document of cities. And it provides a link between implementing policies and then individual development proposals within that area. The specific plan typically includes land use, circulation, parks, recreation, open space, public services and facilities. And then it also lets us know how do we implement specific policies to create all these elements into the development and to develop in the area that we're proposing the project on. Next slide. So then we get into the question of why is this specific plan important? Again, I know I've been repetitive about the general plan, but it really is meeting those goals that as a city, as we adopt the general plan, we have to meet. We focus on available land and development opportunities. So we want to make sure we use land efficiently, and having a specific plan in a designated area allows us to really find efficient uses within the proposed space. Not only that, but it also helps us find public benefits for community needs. As we've touched on land use, we go into housing, we go into commercial spaces, and then infrastructure to the benefit of the city, and also working with the developer to make sure we are able to expand efficiently in collaboration or working together with them. This specific plan includes specific standards and guidelines that supersede the existing zoning code. So it's specifically just for Miramonte, and whatever's not covered in this specific plan, the zoning code and all other applicable laws will also come into play. So this is the main guiding document for this development that we have to implement, but we still have our zoning code that we still have to meet. And we'll touch in particular what areas the zoning code can come in and where does the specific plan come in. Not only for zoning, but also for infrastructure standards, and other applicable regulations in the area. The specific plan, again, also focuses on public services, financing provisions, and designs the development of the area. Next slide. So this picture here briefly shows you the vesting tentative map. A vesting tentative map is a specific map that fulfills the requirements of a tentative map, which is a preliminary plan to show the proposed layout of what this development could look like. It adheres to the provisions of the Subdivision Map Act, which is something we have to follow as a jurisdiction. And then it shows the proposed improvements and the layouts, existing conditions of the area. And a vesting tentative map secures the vested right for a project. So once a vesting tentative map is approved, it's recommended for approval from the Planning Commission and then finally approved to the City Council. Those rights are approved so that the project can move forward. Again, this vesting tentative map was approved by the City Council in 2018 and is being implemented through this specific plan. The map next to the vesting tentative map is the specific plan land use diagram. A land use map is established through the comprehensive plan, in this case, the specific plan, where land use will guide the development, therefore leading to the generation of a zoning map. So this land use map shows where the single family area will be located, multifamily, public facilities, parks, and commercial development. Given that it's part of that specific plan that we talked about and that was approved back in 2018, this is what is being guided. This is what guides development for and what we need to implement. Next slide, please. This is a closer look of what the land use map looks like. Again, this is really what is going to define the zoning standards, design standards, development regulations. Of course, it's the guiding document, but there's many pieces in within it that we still are able to enforce and regulate as a city and as a for the City Council. It helps clear rules for developers, property owners, and it helps us as city staff to really understand what has been approved and what we need to how we can maximize that zoning or land use that has been approved. Next slide, please. So right now, I know that was a lot of information and maybe new to anyone, so we can stop for brief questions regarding the specific plan or any history on the project.
Council, do we have any questions? Yeah, information? Councilmember Ansaldo Sanchez?
Well, where do I begin? So in looking at the maps with the different proposed sections, when it comes to single family, does that include if we would want to do something like smaller lot homes? Would that be considered single family or would that have to go under multifamily because it'd be smaller lots?
Right now, it's currently proposed as single family. I think they have to meet specific guidelines in the specific plan of what single family is considered. There are minimum design lot sizes that they're proposed towards the end of the specific plan that the city will have to move forward with in the master site planning phase of the project.
The one thing too that I wanted to clarify is there has been, state law regulations that have actually upped single family zoning. So there are some by right things like layering on ADUs, for example. So every single family house is, could put an ADU on it. There's also SB 9 regulations that if they're able to meet could further subdivide a single family lot to provide a higher density.
I asked because it does look like, based on the maps, I don't know what the study of maps is, but it does look like the single family homes is like a lot more than a section for multifamily, and I know that we can only build so high when it comes to multifamily. So I fear that we're going to lose the ability to have housing for folks with a lower income or that are looking for more affordable options if we do just have only single family that looks like what we have now at the cost that we have now. So I'm just curious about that.
So as a city, one of our ordinances that we do have our inclusionary housing ordinance, where the developer is still supposed to meet that requirement for the entire project development site, that not only will focus on the multifamily, but also on single family. We understand that there is also the rental need within the city of Soledad. But given that it's been an established plan, we would find those methods to efficiently provide that housing given our regulations.
And then just to add a couple of things on housing development is it's not unusual when you have these types of subdivisions where and if you look all over the county on similar things, where the multifamily is a smaller piece of the single family, because if you think about it, in a multifamily, you're on one lot and you can, build up so you can put many more units on a piece of property than you do with a single family. There's each single family would have traditionally a 5,000 square foot lot. So that's why, it's lower density, it takes more land per unit.
Right.
And so that's typically when you do have kind of a mix of multifamily and single family, you kind of see a pattern similar to this. So this is not unusual.
I think that I'm asking though, because I think aren't we limited to how high we can build though? I thought we could only build up to 3 stories, is that not true?
Given that the specific plan is kind of already decided in terms of the mix of land use, the only changes or the only additional densities that are provided are what state law now requires. So in terms of modifying this, it already has a vesting tentative tract map. And already the specific plan dictates kind of the uses and mixes of what would be in this area. And I don't know, maybe it would be good for Mike to just explain a little bit more about that.
And I see the lady also wants to add something.
So can we, so do you have any additional questions
I do,
before,
yeah.
okay, before we move on? So can we allow him to ask his questions and then?
Sure,
if
I
you guys
just
wanna respond.
I just thought that it might be helpful for Mike to add a little bit based on what I'm kind of provided.
But no, actually, you know what? I think it'd be better if we just completed this and then return to the questions, because I think some of these issues are going to be addressed as we move along.
There will be a section just for housing on minimum the 2.
Right.
That will focus a little bit more on
And
that.
if there's other things about the specific plan, in general, maybe we could push that off to later in the presentation.
Yeah, I just had like another quick question about like that map specifically though. Just cause I know that we have the multifamily in the same section and I'm kind of assuming, I don't know if it's just an assumption, but if we're gonna do affordable housing, it would be in these multifamily lots, right? But I think that I remember that when we were doing our districting process, that we're not supposed to have all of the affordable housing in one section, cause it like creates like a pocket, I forget what the term is. But it's like a pocket of like low socioeconomic folks, and I don't know if that would affect this, cause it's all in the same area.
Yeah,
Yes, so right now, this map is showing us where the multi-housing will be. It doesn't mean that all the multi-housing is gonna be affordable.
Okay,
So we will talk more about affordable because right now, we haven't worked on we're gonna explain where the plan is and where the affordable housing agreement comes into place. Where those units are allocated and the type of unit, whether it is ownership or rental, multifamily or single-family dwelling unit. Those details we can add it to the affordable housing plan, but we're not there yet. We're still trying to get the developer agreement finalized. The developer agreement does touch on the requirements for affordable housing, but the document that will fully explain all of the affordability categories, the affordability terms, the type of properties, that will be the affordable housing agreement.
okay, cool.
so,
And we will have a section about that.
yeah, and it's environmental justice issues.
That's what it
because
was,
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah, so, any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I had the last one, I know that I'm still kind of learning, right,
Right.
coming in. But, I do have like a concern about the school site location at the bottom, the one at the bottom corner, just because it's like close to San Vicente Road and there's already issues with Frank Ledesma and San Vicente Road, and I feel like this is just gonna add to it and the traffic congestion issues. I'm not sure if that was considered when we were doing this, and if we didn't consider putting it closer to literally like on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
So a part of the vesting tentative map and the implementation of the specific plan is also looking into traffic mitigations that will help reduce some traffic congestion in the area, given the existing traffic and the proposed development. So traffic offsite improvement plan will be developed in conjunction with this plan. And it's a requirement for this development to move forward that will be reviewed by city staff just for technical accuracy. And then it will be taken to, I believe, the planning commission and then city council for final approval. So it is a document included as the whole package of the entire development that will be analyzed individually.
And just to add, like when the schools are cited, it's very much, the schools have certain criteria, they take a look at what their needs are. And then it's based, like, this is a phased plan, I think you can see it
Yeah.
up there. So based on the school population and the needs, that's how the schools come in. You don't want schools necessarily away in a different phase of the area because you'll have the needs for the schools earlier. So you can see that, that's why, I think this one comes in phase two, I think,
It's under phase one.
phase one.
Yeah, cause on this side that I said earlier, it also says phase one, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, so it is, and I'm sure at some point the consultants can talk a little bit more about how, I know that, Ron is on the, line, but, when the city, worked with the developers and the school district, it's really, it seems like, oh yeah, you shouldn't put a school there, but it's very complicated because it really depends on the phasing and what the school kind of needs are and how much acres they need to do and how the land is subdivided and so forth.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
I have a couple questions. I may not get the answer today, but I mean, how many units per phase are we talking about?
We have a master phasing plan of the proposed units. Right on top of my in my head, phase 1 and 2 is compromising of 568 units. Which is a mix, and we have a specific slide on the number of units coming forward as well within, the affordable housing component of this conversation. Which will be, helping towards our 6th cycle allocation for the regional housing needs, RENA to, help increase our units and affordable units as well.
My next question, what about public safety or fire protection? Is there gonna be like a substation for fire, or substation for police come?
Yes, I believe, number 7 is proposed as the police and fire station substation or
Substation.
fire station, police substation, as well as a public facility. And that is coming out of, will be created as its own separate document, but also analyzed through the development agreement for public facilities. And then it comes into the role of financing with the city and the developer. So that will be addressed as well.
And so as we continue, do you have additional questions? Yeah, thank you. And I know as we continue, they'll have a little bit more details, but I think it's good to pause as we go through the sections because there's a lot of information. So I want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to ask questions. So let me go on this side with Mayor Pro Tem. Do you have any
I have
questions?
comments and questions. The first one is there any way that we can use different colors? So I don't know if it's me, but I cannot, where is the village, where is the open?
Especially here.
Well, everything looks like a single family to me.
I
So
would.
we please,
Yeah, we can pass the word forward to,
different colors.
for more, so again, the document was done in 2018, so it is a little outdated with the colors and color schemes, but as we're working and bringing new documents for final approval, we can definitely consider that.
And then, one of the reasons why I was opposed originally for that development of West Street is because when I saw this plan, there's only 3 exits. That is, San Vicente, not San Vicente, what is the last, no, San.
San Vicente?
Yeah, San Vicente.
West Street.
It's
San
West
Vicente,
and
West,
Orchard.
and Orchard.
Mhm.
And all those, except for West and that part are 2 line,
Mhm.
the other ones are 1 line.
Mhm.
So if we're gonna create more, if we're gonna open more schools on that side,
Mhm.
and all the schools are really congested right there. I think it's gonna create a really, crazy environment in the morning and in the afternoon. And I cannot imagine an emergency in that area. We don't have an exit to the freeway.
Mhm.
And thank you for addressing the infrastructure, because we haven't been able to start with that, because there's a lot of needs with that. We're looking at bringing almost 8,000 people, almost 10,000 people more.
Mhm.
We don't have the ability to do, and I think that we have to start thinking about adding more to that.
Mhm.
Because if those exits were adopted 10 years ago, the circumstances change, the economics change, and the population change in 10 years. So we have to kind of, if not in that, at least take a look at the things that were approved years ago and see if they still hold true today.
Yeah, no, and that's a valid comment. The process when it comes to the traffic, not only looking on the traffic, what Miramonte is proposing, but also how it'll be affecting existing conditions and providing, again, mitigations and improvements in other areas of Soledad as a result of this development. So that's where city staff is working with the developer to see what other improvements they need to make, not only for Miramonte, but in other areas to help alleviate that traffic.
I live by Orchard, and Orchard has been there for what, maybe 10, 12, 15 years?
Yeah.
And it's already requiring a
Mhm.
lot of improvements on the streets.
Yeah.
So I can imagine in the 5 years, in 5 years more, we're gonna have a crazy potholes all over the
Mhm.
place in Soledad.
And with the new offsite improvement plans, which we would analyze as the city council would approve at the end. updated traffic counts are done to get the most recent information, and that's how the improvements are proposed with that data. So as soon as those improvements are done, that's when, the data is analyzed with the most current information.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we actually, one of the things that is happening in the background, and Ariana's gonna talk about this, is we are doing a lot of technical evaluation around traffic and off-site traffic improvements, which means not in, they have to, of course, do the traffic improvements in Miramonte, but the developer will have to partially fund, because other people in Soledad are contributing, things regarding some of the rampway, improvements, and you will see that as part of the development agreement, because there will be a funding requirement for those. The one thing I was just gonna quickly mention about the schools is that the intention for those schools are to cover the population within Miramonte. So it won't be necessarily people driving from other parts of town. The one thing I will note is there's not a high school, so that the folks who, high school students will be going, yeah, so I don't wanna misrepresent that part.
I don't wanna be creating cheesiness or anything, but if I have been living in this town for 40 years, I know people that live in that side and have the children in this side, because my cousin, my neighbor, my friend is on that side, and it's easier to take everybody. So I think, yes, technically, it's gonna be just for them, but I bet a lot of people are gonna move to that and their children over there, because somebody lives there, somebody is, the family that takes care of them is closer to that. So we will have, and we have to consider those events, not just put them aside just because it is not within the regular things that we consider. No.
Okay, so I have, yes, can we go to the slide versus the background history, please? No, just two questions, and then, so, you know, as Mayor Velasquez was mentioning, she was involved in the background of the history. So if we go back to 2010, and I really want to stress, you know, for the community and that they're listening, is that we were doing this like over more than 20 years, that we proposed this, they proposed it, they denied it, city council denied it, and now we're moving forward. I understand, my question is, if we can go back to the slide that was on there. The sites, I mean, I do see some potential in commercial business, so how many commercial businesses will that consist of?
The plan is still not laid out for the commercial side yet, but it's proposing 100,000 square feet of commercial space. And that is number 5, on section 5, in the middle of the development.
Yeah, because I know that, of course, yes, this is great, and of course, we do hear a lot of concern from our residents in regards to traffic, safety, schools, and like, for me, it takes a few of us like 5-10 minutes to get to the shopping centers. So that's just more potential to have commercial businesses close by to the neighborhoods, you know. I have two stores next to my home, you know, and it's very convenient. But, you know, a lot of us don't have that, you know, so we have to drive to the shopping center. And then I think in a later discussion, maybe we can revisit like those developers that may be doing another ramp, you know, from entrance and exiting. So, I mean, we're growing, you know, we are gonna face traffic, we're gonna face a lot of stuff. But I think we, as you know, as we know Soledad, we have to adjust, you know, so that way we can make it home. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in terms of the ramps, we have explored adding a ramp, but the challenges with Caltrans and the cost is kind of in the you know, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and of course, we have to legally, and there's actually been new state law regarding this, but we can only charge a development their fair share of any cost, so whatever is not their fair share would be borne on the city.
Yeah.
So just, I wanna make sure to keep that in mind, but we are with you, we understand the need, and that's something that has been expressed as part of the general plan, so.
Yeah, and then if I may add, I mean, I understand the feel of home here, because I hear it a lot, but we're growing, like, yes, I understand, but you know what? Home is within us to make it home to Soledad, so that's, I wanted to share that, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to just make some comments on this piece also, since, you know, it is with the map, and I do want to say this publicly. Obviously, this is a project that has been here for a long time, but I know I was the only dissenting vote on approval of the map, on the tentative map. And the reason why I was not in agreement with the map, for various reasons, some were already said, but I think for me was a concurrency of the development of both the affordable and having the mix of the concurrency, but also having the diverse housing. And if you look at the specific plan for Miramonte and what the mission or the vision is to really have a diverse housing. And so for me, when I looked at the map, that's not what it reflects, because we have a lot of single family homes, as what was pointed out, and only pockets of the multifamily homes. And for many of us that have lived here in Soledad for many years, as we saw this part of town grow, when Soledad grow, we saw an increase in the single family housing and very minimal multifamily housing or housing for rental or other types of housing. So there was no diverse housing. So for me, when somebody says they're gonna build diverse housing, then that means it's different housing stocks, housing types, and that's not what the plan reflects. So that was one of my concerns. The other was also the integration. We know in this city, we have high overcrowding rates, and many of our families, yes, some choose to live in multi-generational housing, but some don't. And so addressing some of that is really important. And also, as was said already, for me, is just the environmental justice pieces. If we're gonna have neighborhoods, and I think, you know, many of us that are passionate about housing, we understand that we can have integrated neighborhoods that have, you know, single family housing, that has affordable housing, that has a mixed type of housing, right? Where we can, you know, look at the policies that we have and how do we really build community and how do we really build neighborhoods that really meet the needs of our families. And so for me, I just wanted to make that clear to the public. Obviously, we're moving forward. But I was really disappointed in terms of we were building exactly what we've been building for the last 30 years in the city of Soledad, without modifying and without looking at what our current needs were of our families, which were very different than it was 20 years ago when I was growing up. And just, you know, the other comment in terms of the businesses in section 5, you know, for that commercial piece is very minimal for the magnitude of this project. So I see, because I live in Madrid and the only little shopping center is on Gavilan. And so for the residents, if you really want to build a walkable community, and I think that's part of our mission as well, and what we really talk about in our general plan, and we've heard from our residents, is we really want to build these walkable neighborhoods. And we saw that happen when you opened up Orchard. We don't have walkable neighborhoods because people can't walk to the grocery store if we only have one limited amount of commercial place, and then everything else, you have to get in your car to be able to go all the way down to the other side of town, right? Especially if we continue to build up and we have not more retail for people to shop. And then the other thing for me was under the phase 7 of the police and substation, we're growing. We don't need that in phase 7. We needed that, and these are some of the comments I made, so I just want to make that clear. We needed that before in the other phases because we're increasing already. We already see now as a council, and obviously we're facing the increase in costs in you know, our CAL FIRE, but we need another substation. Our only substation that we have for police and fire is what, Megan, 50 years old? You know, and we're creating this in phase 7 of this project. And my last point is that when we built out Soledad the first time and we have all these single family homes, we left pockets for the affordable homes that weren't created concurrently, that weren't built in 5 or 10 years. They were built, like, some of them are really coming to fruition, and that's 20 years later. And those were some of the concerns that I had, and I still have, and I want to make sure that as we continue, that we're making sure that as a council, we're not creating the same issues that were created in the past.
We'll have, he has a few comments or do we?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, if I may. So as far as the diversity of housing, I want to be clear that while there are about 1,300 single-family houses, there are 1,100 multifamily units planned. And we have to get some clarification on how density bonus will eventually work, but that might actually add a couple hundred more multifamily units. So basically be about a 50-50 split. And within there, there's opportunity to do apartments, townhomes, condos. So, and as mentioned before, every single family home could potentially have theoretically an ADU. So that to me seems like a very diverse, housing stock. As far as the commercial goes, what you're seeing on the map, yeah, that looks, I think it's about 7 acres. But when we, when this project was approved in 2018, we presented a commercial site in which it went into phase 7 that doubled the space, and then we created like sort of like almost like a downtown style, a commercial mixed use area. And so I can share that with you for a refresher. But it is the commercial. Our plan for the commercial is much larger than what you actually see there. So I just want to make those clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Leigh. And then again, going back to housing, we'll have a specific section that will touch on the number of units being proposed as a whole for Miramonte and specific programs that we're working on the affordable housing part.
May I make one comment?
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about housing later, but I just noticed that for the multifamily sections, those are at later phases. So I hear that we're gonna have like a couple thousand, but that's not gonna be until way later, right? Because it's phase 6, 7, 8, 9 from where the phases are.
So I think what we're looking at is, phase, 2. Is proposed to, actually, I think they proposed the senior housing complex with
134.
134 units in phase 2.
And then in those slides, we'll have that information about what's being proposed, which in phase 1 and 2. The affordable housing plan, as Beatriz mentioned, will have the rundown of the phasing with affordable units and market rate units. And the concurrency between the market rate and affordable units will be determined within the affordable housing plan as well.
So council, just because I want to be vigilant of time as well, and it's 7 already, why don't we, let's finish your presentation, because it seems like there's a lot of information that you're going to give to us that there's questions on. So let's just go through the whole presentation, council, write down your questions, please, so we don't forget, because those are critical, and then we'll come back at the end, so that way you can get through everything.
There'll be another section where we stop, because I know it is a lot of technical information, so, but again, if we need to clarify these things, I'm happy to move on that. Okay, next slide, please. And then one more. So the next part of this presentation is touching on the roles in the comprehensive plan and implementation of the Miramonte specific plan area. And the comprehensive plan, again, is this Miramonte specific plan. So what is the role of the community? What is the role of city staff? What is the role of the city council and the role of the planning commission? So it's pretty much coming together, those 4 entities, and helping and implement this Miramonte specific plan based on the approved policies and programs. Not only that were mirrored from the general plan, but that were approved through the specific plan. The role of the community plays a huge role. Engaging in public meetings, they're able to do at this time. We understand that, something has been approved, but what can they do now to move forward and be engaging with this conversation? So attending public meetings and voicing concerns or support, participating and advocating for the project, review, comment on plans and agreements. We have to encourage or acknowledge that they also play a role in meeting their own need, the needs that they would like to have. And then again, they're more than welcome to engage with city staff. City staff also has a place, and we'll touch on that. But anyone from the community is welcome to touch in with city staff to gather more information and clarify project details. We're more than happy to inform them and provide information on that end. Next slide, please. And then we go into the role of city staff now. So our goal and role is to implement a specific plan, meaning we have to check all the boxes that were approved through the specific plan. If there's specific affordability requirements, standards, designs, conditions of approval, and then obviously we have to meet CEQA compliance. So all of that will be affecting the project, and we have to make sure we comply with those state regulations and making sure the project is meeting the appropriate standard it's supposed to meet. We're also analyzing traffic improvement, housing compliance to make sure, again, the needs are met through, for the community, but also approve what has been talked about within the specific plan. We also analyze financing plans, what is the best benefit not only for the community, but for the city as a whole. Provide a draft on the development agreement, which will be finalized by the city council. Provide a draft on affordable housing plans, park master plans, and phasing plans. So a phasing plan is an important aspect of the development, which will determine at what point will specific units or areas will be developed throughout the project lifetime. And then we also focus on any amendments or updates that we need to, again, in compliance with CEQA. So if there's EIR mitigations that we need to comply with, we work on that end and make sure they are addressed. And there's amendments, which we'll be touching on. We have to make sure we meet them and make sure that the conditions of approval are met. As the project is approved through the city council, they do have to meet specific conditions of approval and mitigations to reduce impact in the environment, including land use, traffic, air, and water. Again, conforming to the overall picture of CEQA. Next slide, please. Then we go into the role of the Planning Commission, which is another body that the city, and as a city council, you will play a huge role with in communicating on. They review everything considering land use, zoning, and development, and make that recommendation to the city council. So they get to review master phasing plans related to land use, master site plans, architectural designs, park and landscape designs. They provide that initial review to city staff or from city staff to the council and make that recommendation for approval. The Planning Commission also hosts public hearings, so the community is also welcome to attend those meetings within the Planning Commission and provide community input. And then they also review and enforce environmental review compliance mitigation program, again, to conform with CEQA. And now we get to the role of the city council. The city council has the final review and approval of the recommended items from the Planning Commission. So the goal of the Planning Commission is to pretty much phase out or enforce land use decisions for council to then make that final review and approval. This again includes the master phasing plans, master site plans, any architectural designs that can be deferred to the city council, and then park landscape design. So that will be something that you will, as a council, will decide on the final approval on. Again, focusing on the policies that have been approved through the specific plan. And as staff, we will have to communicate that to you, what has been approved with the specific plan, and how it's being interpreted with the proposed designs. The biggest role with the council as well is the budgeting and funding decisions for public facilities, development impact fees, comprehensive financing plan on Miramonte. So that's a very big distinction between the Planning Commission and City Council, where City Council focuses more on the funding and budgeting of the project as a whole. The City Council also oversees and implements amendments, again, with the mitigation monitoring program for CEQA, And the city council also finalizes the development agreement after all the technical aspects of the DA has been done through staff and the planning commission. Then the city council does final review for consideration of approval.
And Ariana, just if I may interrupt, I think, so a lot of this stuff, the city council took action, you know, like the specific plan, the vesting tentative track map, certification of the EIR. The things that are gonna be coming to you, and I also forgot to mention, you guys approved the storm drain plan, the sewer plan, the water plan. The things that are left to come back to council, which Ariana is gonna get into, are the development agreement. We'll probably just lock in the park expectation, so we'll come back to you, the park and landscaping plan. And then the housing, the affordable housing plan. Those are the things that are kind of the last parts of the puzzle.
And it'll come back, or it's enforcing those policies that have been generated through the specific plan, and as well, again, conforming to the general plan itself. Next slide, please. So now that we know the role, we know a little background of Miramonte, it's also essential to learn the development process of how land gets developed. In this case, this land was annexed into the city, meaning it was out of the city limits. We had to work with outside agencies, in this case, LAFCO, to apply and make this annexation into the city. We focus once we're in that process, we also touch on zoning, which helps develop, first is developed by land use and then zoning, which allows us to understand what can be built in specific areas. And that allows us to then create subdivisions that will then focus on master site plans. And that's when we can, the developer is able to apply for building permits and get to construction, get inspections. And the goal for development is to obtain certificate of occupancy, not only for housing, but also commercial development. Here on the next slide, we have the tip, pretty much where we're at right now. So the annexation, the certificate of completion is conditionally approved, meaning we have to, or the developer has to work on obtaining agricultural conservation easement. And we'll touch on that in the presentation to have that annexation completed. But right now, we've been working on establishing the subdivision design and zoning, establishing the subdivisions and the design, meaning traffic, implementing zoning. And we also are working on public amenities. So public financing and then implement the policies that the specific plan has already been approved for. So right now we're in between the subdivision and the site plan area, where before we get to the site plans and how buildings are going to look, we need to work on the background portions so that we understand how that will look for future development. So that includes street network, infrastructure, parks, and creating those standard master plans of how those communities will be looking like based on the specific plan. Next slide, please. So the current status of Miramonte, again, we have the approved specific plan and the vesting tentative map. We have a conditionally approved annexation. We have already approved the water, where the council has approved the water, stormwater, and sewer master plans. And right now, we're currently working on compliance on the conditions of approval and the mitigation monitoring, which is CEQA. And we'll touch on the mitigation and what CEQA is within the next slides. In order to create this specific plan and have it up to that site plan, we have to develop design and standards for parks in Miramonte. That includes a parks and landscape master plan, public safety plan that includes police and fire. So design, making sure we either nail down the requirements for what a substation will look like or what a fire station will look like. We also have to create an affordable housing plan, which is approved by the city council. We had a brief discussion already in December of 2024 with the ad hoc committee for affordable housing. So preliminary conversations have started. We have to develop a public facilities financing plan, which is still right now in the works. And also the development agreement is currently in the works with staff to work on the technical aspect of those documents to then come to the city council for final decision. Next slide, please. So this is all important because we have to understand that all these pieces are connecting towards the development agreement. So all these actions, plans, implementation measures, conditions of approval, and CEQA mitigation monitoring program all eventually help create and craft the development agreement. So offsite traffic improvements and fee programs, public facility financing programs, master plans, mitigation monitoring, and impact fees help towards that development agreement. So there's a lot of moving factors that require a lot of technical accuracy that city staff is currently working on, along with the developer and the EMC planning firm, in order to craft and come into an agreement between the city and the developer. And with that, after we explain what the background process is and where it's leading to, we touch a little bit more on what is a development agreement, which is a legally binding contract between the property developer and the city. This pretty much outlines the responsibilities, conditions, of who is in charge of what within the development. It touches on infrastructure, land use, and zoning that may not have been covered during the conditions of approval phase. It locks in phasing of when things can be built. It also dedicates there's dedication of public spaces, permitting and approval process, financial contributions, responsibilities, environmental and safety regulations, and enforcement. This helps balance, the development agreement helps balance the interests of developers, cities, and residents, ensuring an orderly growth and infrastructure development while protecting public interests. So it's a collaboration of the city and the developer to make sure we also get the development that we need for addressing the community needs, but also that we don't acquire a hard cost on the city for this development. So that is the big picture of what a development agreement is. It could be, when it comes to developments like this, it could be very difficult to finance. This development agreement not only helps us, again, look into what we need to, how much the city will acquire cost on, but it also helps the developer provide a certainty on the project, and it'll show its visibility and how it'll move forward with financing. Next slide, please. Now, this may look like a lot, but we'll go through it. It's really the deal points of what the development agreement will be touching on. Again, it's crucial because this development agreement defines the duration of this agreement, ensuring that both the developer and the city understand their rights and obligations throughout the project timeframe. So that's one of the deal points that we'll be touching on. There's typically development agreements range from 10 to 20 years, meaning up to the 20 years, they have to complete everything that is provided in the DA.
And just to interrupt, most development agreements could even last a little longer because this is a long-term project. Build out is probably 20 to 30 years, so a lot of development agreements will have some renewal. If you don't want to lock in 20 years and have them just land bank, but usually if you see good faith effort towards construction, it's not uncommon to extend a development agreement or have extension provisions in the development agreement.
Mm-hmm. And with this time frame, if certain areas are not met, there's specific penalties or anything requirements that the developer has to meet in order for that development to continue forward. So that's also why it's important to have this development agreement with the developer to ensure that the proper development and land use is efficiently constructed throughout the process, and specific boxes are checked as the specific plan is being implemented throughout the DA. Another part of the development agreement is the public facility financing. again, that we mentioned, it really locks in the costs that the city may inquire and the cost of developer, will have to provide, again, as Megan mentioned, the, fair share cost. Will be analyzed through that document and then agreed upon within the city and the developer. The development agreements, again, typically go through the planning commission first, and then city council gets that final say on what the final agreement is composed of. This public facility financing plan will be its own standalone plan as well, but again, a lot of the timing and responsibility can be addressed through the DA. Next, we go into the affordable housing plan, which will be, again, its own standalone document to be enforced throughout the development. But any missing pieces from that affordable housing plan can then be locked into the development agreement that, again, the city council will approve throughout. We also have to consider the mitigation monitoring program addendum that we will be talking about. But the DA will define accountability to make sure that that program is established appropriately through the development to reduce significant environmental impacts that have been analyzed through the CEQA and environmental assessment process. It also focuses on the water, stormwater, and sewer, which again have been approved by the city or are its own documents, but it'll define accountability and costs through on the DA as well. Again, a lot of the DA really is focusing on financing, so also development impact fees. So that's really defined of what the developer is responsible for when it comes to the development of the project. Also, if there's any fee credits or reimbursements, then there's also defined throughout the DA within the negotiation between the developer and the city. Then we also focus on off-site traffic improvements. Again, the phasing of when those specific items are triggered, but we also have to focus that a lot of these improvements are triggered through the CEQA compliance monitoring program, when there's significant effects being proposed. So the monitoring program really is the big document.
Yeah, maybe, I could, since we have a part on C5, I can.
Yes, it'll lead to the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, Ariana.
No, you're fine.
And I know we have to probably speed up a little quicker, so I'm just gonna blow through really fast. But just to let folks know that that everything in California is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, and it's basically an analysis that needs to be done on the potential impacts of a development. And of course, a major development like this requires an environmental impact report. Move on. And we can go to what is an EIR. Slide 5. So an environmental impact report is a detailed environmental study. And whenever possible, we try to mitigate the impacts to a level of insignificance. But there are times, and when you have a big project like this, that you can't mitigate every impact. And in which case you do an EIR, and council adopts what's called a statement of overriding consideration, which says, yes, there are these environmental impacts, but the benefits of the project outweigh the impacts, and we want to move forward. And that's kind of what happened with this project, that at the time, the council certified the EIR, and that there are impacts. We're not saying that they're not. Most of them have been mitigated, or if things have been done to reduce them, but it doesn't mean they have gone away. Next slide. So like I said, there are some impacts that were mitigated, but there are a lot of impacts that are mitigated and were mitigated in this project. And so as part of the CEQA process, a project has to have a mitigation and monitoring reporting program. And that lists all of the mitigations with how the city has to implement them to make sure that the impacts are minimized. And we did do that. I will say that there's some things in that mitigation monitoring reporting program that are a little unclear, especially around when those triggers have to happen. So the developer is asking for us to look at clarifying some of those mitigations. And that might be something that comes back to you as an addendum, an environmental addendum. Okay. And then I think just, again, these mitigations, they have to be clear. We, the city, track and make sure that they occur. There's a schedule that's part of it, and there's a phasing for that. So I'm gonna zip through that next. And I will turn it over to Beatrice so she can hit on the housing, because I know everyone's wanting to hear about the housing. So,
Yes,
Ariana and I are planning nerds. We could talk about this all day, but I think you want to hear about the housing.
so yeah, let's talk about housing in Miramonte. And so as Ariana mentioned, this development is proposing 2,392 units. That's a total amount for all of the housing within the development, but that housing is separated between different density levels. So the developer is proposing 1,318 low density units, 626 medium density, 134 senior housing units, and 314 residential, what they call a residential study area. So, the specifics of how this housing is planned will go through the affordable housing agreement, which that one, as Ariana was mentioning in one of the previous slides, before coming to council, city staff can take the initial review and work with the developer on what we need based on our inclusionary ordinance. Then we will present it to the affordable housing ad hoc committee. And after based on their recommendation, we will come back to council also for approval or direction if you decide not to approve what we proposed. We can go to the next slide. So the way that we are monitoring housing, the inclusionary housing ordinance plays the biggest role when it comes to the affordable housing. So through our inclusionary housing ordinance, any development, it's mandated to produce 20% of affordable housing. Within that 20%, 8% has to be moderate housing, 6% has to be low income housing, and another 6% very low. So we are gonna look for this development, even though they're producing over 2,000 homes, for the RHNA cycle that we're in our housing element, we're in RHNA cycle number 6. And I just wanted to do a little overview, tied it back to the housing element, to how many units we have to produce in the next RHNA cycle. We have to produce 724 units, and the income levels are shown on the screen. So we have to produce 100 very low income units, 65 low income units, 183 moderate income, and 376 above moderate. If we produce more than those numbers, that's okay, but this is the bare minimum that we have produced between now and 2030, in 2031. So Miramonte, the phases of Miramonte that will align with this RHNA cycle will be phase 1 and phase 2. We expect those phases to be completed within the current RHNA cycle. Within phase 1 and 2 is the blue chart that I have on the screen. So on phase 1, it's typical that the first phase will not produce as much low and very low income because they are doing the infrastructure. So on the map, you can see that, for example, the school site is one of the school sites is part of phase 1. So that's part of the public facilities that are getting implemented in phase 1. So it's not typical for a development to have on the early stages a little less affordable housing, but definitely on phase 2. So on phase 1, you can see that we have 0 very low projected, 0 low, 22 moderate income households, and 199 above moderate. On phase 2, we have projected 50 very low income units, 50 low income units, 55 moderate income units, and 192 above moderate. So the total of these units, the total amount that will be produced within phase 1 and phase 2 is 568 units. That will give us 50 very low income, 50 low income, and 77 moderate income units. Again, the way that we enforce this regulation on the developer is through the affordable housing agreement. Now, a little bit of, because I think we're all eager to see affordable housing in our community. It's a high need. We hear it at every meeting. And I think those of us that work and live here, we also live it. We also go through it, right? So, but we need to understand housing financing and how affordable housing, even though it's very important, it has other challenges when it comes to financing. So yes, we want to enforce our affordable housing regulations. We want to make sure that affordable housing is developed, but we also want to make sure that we are not turning development away. So it's a delicate balance where development still has to be viable when we're also meeting our affordable housing needs. So I wanted to break down a little bit of how housing financing works for the different type of units, for market rate and for affordable units. So the funding sources for market rate is usually private equity, banks, or the real estate investment trust. For affordable housing, we have the low income housing tax credit that is very common, state and federal grants like CDBG or home, and philanthropy. That's where sometimes we can provide some gap financing to affordable housing. For market rate, the rent pricing, it's also sometimes a factor. That for market rate, we know that there are some regulations, but it's less restricted. For affordable housing, we do have a cap based on affordability, and that also has an impact on the rate of return for the investors. Government support for rate market units, it's very minimum, or we do provide the support getting the developer agreement. We do provide some of the technical support, but when it comes to financing, we rarely provide any funds. However, when it's affordable housing, we are able to provide subsidies, help developers apply for tax credits, be part of the process with them. All of these different sets of aspects play a role on the timeline. So given that affordable housing, the process to obtain financing for affordable housing can be a little longer, and it can require more sources of funding than market rate. The timeline for affordable housing tends to be a little longer. Market rate housing is able to move faster because the return on investment is also faster. But also with market rate housing, the developers are running a higher risk because they're taking a different set of loans. For affordable housing, the risk is lower, but also the return is more limited. And I just wanted to give you a visual of the capital sources when it comes to housing financing. Market rate, the capital resources is their mortgage and their equity, right? So that moves faster and that obtains value to the property. For affordable housing, there's a gap. And that's where sometimes when you see some affordable development, that's where we play a role as government entities. This development that is proposed as market rate and the affordable housing that we're asking the developer to produce is within our inclusionary ordinance. So it's not a separate project, the affordable housing. But I just wanted to turn a little bit of light to this because this is that delicate balance that as city staff and as council, we need to be aware of that. Yes, we want to push for affordable housing to the point where it is still feasible. The project is still feasible. And now let's talk about the city's responsibilities. So we need to create the environment for housing production. We can provide the density bonus that is part of the incentives that we provide, especially for higher density housing, affordable housing. We play a significant role in the housing programs that we create. That could be first-time homebuyer programs, that could be any type of rent subsidies. We play an important role there as well. As I mentioned, gap financing for affordable housing, and it's also, we play a big role in making sure that this development comes into light by providing the essential permits and streamlining that process. And I don't think I covered enough about the,
Was there a slide missing?
I think so.
I think we could probably wrap it up with the last
Yeah.
slide and open it up for questions. So I think we alluded a few times about this, LAFCO has conditionally approved the annexation, pending the agricultural mitigation because, this development would occur on agricultural land. The developer is required to put the equal amount of farmland into a conservation easement. And so this is, something, that took some time, but LAFCO did, also update their policy related to agricultural, conservation, easements. And so one of the things that the developer is looking into is, and which LAFCO now allows, is kind of a phased approach to providing the agricultural easement because it's very, very expensive and the timeline is very drawn out to do the whole thing. This would allow it to be more feasible to actually get the agricultural easement for the areas that are likely to go through development in the next few years. So in that particular case, we're talking phase 1 and phase 2. But the developer has the ability to kind of decide how they want to move forward with the conservation easement. But this is a huge cost. It's a huge upfront cost to the developer to purchase these conservation easements, especially because we have such valuable land in Monterey County. So I don't want to talk for the developer, but usually developers need the certainty of a development agreement before they would make such a huge cash outlay for this, mitigation. So the developer is looking forward to the development agreement with that to provide that certainty. Then they won't officially be able to move forward until they lock down those conservation easements. And at that time, they'll get a certificate of completion and can move forward. So I think that concluded our.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry, guys, to rush you through.
No, it's okay.
Thank you, and thank you. I know it's 8 o'clock. I don't think we have a time limit here, but we still want to make sure we get out early. I mean, we don't want to be here till 11 or 12, so, thank you for that presentation. And so let me, with that, I know there's a lot of information. Thank you for the updates. This is really helpful. I think for some of the, even for myself, I mean, it's a good update in terms of where we're at, where we've been and where we're at and what the future holds and how critical this project is. So I think one of the things for me, at least what I heard is, we want to make sure that what we build and what we move forward with, especially with the development agreement that is very crucial, that the council really understand all the different components and that we get it right. Because this is almost increasing 50% of our footprint. And so that's going to be an impact for the next 20 beyond years. So it's a very highly critical project. So I really thank the staff for putting this together because I really want to make sure that as we move forward with this project that the council and the community has an opportunity to listen to the updates. There may not be some things that they can change. And I think it's really important to ensure that our community understands what's coming and what, obviously as many have said, housing has been a big concern and affordable housing, workforce housing has been a concern for our community. So we want to make sure that people understand what this project will and will not provide. So, okay, so with that, I will open it up then to the public. Let me go out to the public to see if there's any public comments first before I bring it to the council for any comments or questions. So at this time, I'll take it out to those that are joining us here in our city council chambers at the community center. If there's any public comments from those that are here with us.
And you are the public.
Yeah, you're part of the public, Angelica.
Everyone's
Don't
there.
get forced.
I know we did take public comment, I think earlier, but. What, sorry?
Yeah, but we're doing
Is there still time limitation on the public comment, just to be?
the 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we still are, but because we did the business and I know we did it at the beginning, but we've already done the presentation. And so as we do with the business items in a regular meeting, then we also want to make sure that we take it out to the public for any public comments on the information that was presented. Okay, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is serious. It's a really serious topic. I know you mentioned that in the, actually, let me go back. One of the slides, right, you mentioned that it was on phase one that, for very low income, right? Literally, I heard you say that it is pretty much like low, but that's not low, that's nothing. That's no affordable housing prioritized in the first phase. And then when we go to phase two, it's still very, very low compared to above moderate, and I'm looking at above moderate. And that's an income range of 180,000. That's a lot. Like I'm like looking at this and honestly, I'm like, I'm ready to move out of California. This is so unfortunate. Like I can't afford to live here. You know, and but I'm thinking also about our community members, right? And the majority of our, community members work in agriculture and these are not the incomes that they're making. So I guess like my question is, are you able to work something out with the city, like maybe phase two, going to phase one and maybe upping the houses for very low and low income? For phase two, that's my question.
Thank you. So one thing I did want to clarify is this is just for the developer. It's not really responding to what the city is already in the pipeline. The city council made a great investment by purchasing a 4.6 acre lot right on Gavilan, kind of kitty corner from the high school. And that is going to be 100 units of affordable housing. We also have another project in the pipeline off of Santa Clara, which would be 40 units of affordable family housing. And we have a couple of other smaller things that will probably actually come online before Miramonte. They're pretty, or at least the 40 units that I'm talking about is pretty far along in the process and they're about to apply for tax credits. So just when you're looking at this, don't think that this is the only thing that we're working on. There's actually quite a bit of infill projects. I also didn't mention, we're also working on some moderate ownership opportunities. We're looking at other programs, but if you wanted to see the full plan for the city in terms of how we're going to build affordable housing or encourage affordable housing, we just adopted our housing element. And I'm sure that we got your contact information and we can share it with you and kind of talk through that. And I don't know, Beatrice, you have.
Yeah, the other thing to that is that this is a market rate development. Well, this is a, private market rate development that we can only enforce 20% of the housing to be affordable. So we have limitations on the percentage of affordable housing that we can request because we also need the private sector to build housing. So the units that we are requesting is based on our inclusionary ordinance for this development. Those are the affordable units. It doesn't mean that we cannot do any programs to incentivize homeownership, like the first time homebuyer program, down payment assistance. In those programs, people could benefit from it and it will really help them either put down their down payment or be able to afford some type of housing. So we can separate some of the housing projects with that development and the production side and also what are the programs. So sometimes we have to make sure that production is underway so that we can actually complement it with programs, but they go hand in hand. It's just that tonight we're only discussing the production side of it, but we also have programs that are in the pipeline and that we hope that we can make soon available to our residents.
Yeah, but let me just add to that too, because I want to make sure that some of the comments that Angelica made, and to your point, Angelica, you're right. The affordability, when you look at the low and very low, are extremely, I mean, that's under 56. Some of our, especially in a valley that we live, there's agriculture workers that make under that amount, right? 40 under, so they don't even meet that 50% very low threshold. And I think we're aware of that, and that's been one of the concerns of the council, or at least, you know, for some of us, it's been, how do we make sure that we really produce affordable housing? The other thing is, too, in terms of the 20% inclusionary, that's what we have. And I know I battled with it myself because 20% inclusionary is not enough, not for what we need. But I know that in terms of what Beatriz mentioned in financing is how can we balance the financing with the developer with what the inclusionary that we need. But we have to be able to look at, can we go back and look at if that's something that's going to work for our city? Because we want it to work for our city. It's, for me, I thought we have, you know, we have 20% and it's a drop in the bucket for what we really need in terms of affordability. And then there's different ranges. And some of the RENA numbers come from the state. So this is not the city producing these numbers, just to clarify for our community as well, is the state produces these numbers through a whole process with AMBAG and a lot of different, you know, input from, you know, different financing through the Department of through the state's Department of Financing and all of these other numbers that they have with future projection and whatnot. But these are the numbers we have. I battled with that as well because I don't think they match what we really need. And obviously they're minimums. Can we do more? Yes, but it's hard to get developers that want to increase that. So to Megan's point, the city has to also look at what other things can we do to be able to support the housing needs. But for me, I think this is an opportunity to be able to look at, we want to make sure that what we have before us with Miramonte moving forward is what we really need as much as we can, staying within the confines of what's already been approved and what you know we can do, right? But to look at it in a way that how can we produce more to be able to really support the housing needs of our families.
Through the chair, if I could address something that Angelica said at the end, and it's something that was related to the question that I have. She mentioned, can phase two be phase one instead? And I think the purpose of her question was, if we see there is very low and low income in phase one. So what at least in my question that I was preparing is there any chance that we can allow the developer to do a little bit more of the about moderate housing so that we can include at least 10 low and very low homes in phase one? And I think that is what Angelica was going. Look, is there any way that we can move the numbers around so that we can allow, so that we can have at least 10 and 10 questions, 20 questions, 20 houses, I'm sorry, 20 houses done in phase one, so that we can remember one of the issues that we had for a long time is that we want the low and very low income housing to be built at the same time that the market rate homes. I don't see a problem in allowing them to do more of the market rate homes if they agree to build a few houses that are, I was thinking 10 and 10 low and very low income homes.
So we do have the developer online. He can maybe explain a little bit about the rationale of the phasing.
And while Blake is getting ready to, if he wants to add, also for low and very low, it's really hard to do ownership opportunities. So we're looking more at rental because those income levels, it's really hard for them to get some mortgage loan approved. Even if we provide the first time home buyer assistance, it's really hard for them to be approved. So normally low and very low, we're looking at apartments and rental opportunities, and those usually are built at a higher density. So in order for it to be feasible, they tend to build complexes, like a 50 apartment complex. So that's, I think he can speak more to it, but I think part of the rationale behind that may be that he's thinking about a complex, but I can let Leigh explain that.
Yes, yeah, Beatrice, you explained that very well. Yeah, and I would love to have even one-on-one conversations about this because it is a complex issue. Providing affordable housing is, believe it or not, very expensive, and it's very difficult to get it done. So that's why we work with Eden Housing and any other potential affordable housing developer to create these projects. And in order to make it work and to get the tax credits and whatnot to fund the projects, you have to have a certain amount of density and a certain amount of numbers. You can't have 10 units standalone. It just doesn't work. You have to get to 40, 50, 60 units, unfortunately, in order for the projects to actually be able to come together. And that's government financing, other economic realities that factor in. And so if we can make it work, we're definitely open to the conversation. But I'd also go back to what Megan said, is that there is the 96 unit complex on Gablin. There's the 40 unit complex on Santa Clara that should be coming online here in the next few years. And so there will be affordable housing opportunities if you look at it holistically. They are coming even before these single family market rate homes are coming. So I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Yes, it does. But on the other side, I don't think that what the city is doing to provide affordable housing should be included as part of the Miramonte, because it's two different developments. And Miramonte should be able to provide this ratio.
Sure. Well, just so you know that we were involved in both those projects, the one on Gablin and the one on Santa Clara. But so there's another economic reality to this. Is extremely expensive to get a subdivision going. There are upfront costs that we're stressing about, like how do you get the first house built? Basically. Now, long term, I don't want anyone crying for me. Long term, it works out. It's just getting it off the ground is a very difficult process, and that's something I think that needs to be understood too, in how this all works. Paying for, for instance, there's a stormwater basin that needs to be built before anyone can live within Miramonte, and that's several $1 million right there. So you have to figure out how do you get that paid for, and so that is why we end up, in the first couple of phases being market rate heavy. It's so that you can even just pay for so the project can pay for itself before you can get into, the other phases, get into the multifamily, get into the affordable units, get into the commercial. It just has to be able to actually pay for itself at the beginning before you get there.
So, Beatriz, if I can, may I pretend you? Yeah. So let me go back because I want to make sure that we finish the public comment period before we conclude it and come back to the council. Sorry, just because I want to make sure that I allow for any public comments for those that are joining us via Zoom, so we can make sure I don't forget about that. So on the business item that we had, just any public comments in regards to the information that was provided as part of the presentation for the Miramonte specific plan. And this is out for those that are joining us in Zoom. Okay, so I don't see any hands raised, so I will bring it back to the council. So now we'll have the opportunity now to share your questions or comments that you may have. And let me start. let me start, I'll keep mine all together, so I just don't wanna forget. So let me start with, Councilwoman Viñuelos.
First of all, Beatriz, Ariana, thank you so much for the detailed explanation, the breakdown, you guys and the staff and the team. I appreciate the detailed presentation and also, you know, everyone that works with you guys, appreciate it. My question is if we can go back to the slide and okay, in regards to the zoning, are we doing both slides? Are we asking for the?
No, we're just,
Like,
yeah,
just
okay,
everything,
yeah,
everything?
everything that was presented now.
Okay, so, you know what, at this time, I did ask my questions, and I know Councilmember Gonzalo asked some of those questions I was gonna ask, and also Caldera too, so, at this point, I don't have anything, but I appreciate, you know, all the concerns that, you know, we have, you know, that's been presented to you guys in regards to safety, you know, commercial, and of course, you know, the subdivision for our first responders and, you know, everything that is gonna be into plan and works and also first time buyers, you know, the diversity as Mayor Velasquez had shared, because I too, you know, like to be a first time buyer or rent, you know, a development, but that's just another story. But anyway, I wanted just to kind of share that and, you know, just say another comment, you know, we have a lot of our residents saying, well, it's gonna create chaos, it's gonna create congestion. And those are the ones that I reach out to and I want them to be involved and kind of come to these city council meetings, you know, as you know, Angelica, thank you, Angelica, for coming, you know, we have one, you know, and we have, you know, we're not gonna, you know, all the social media that goes on, you know, of course, we're gonna have that, you know, those comments and stuff, and that's okay, but we want them to get involved in this big project that's been going on since what, 2018, that we adopted, and since 2010, that's a lot, you know, and I know that, you know, I just want to say that because I'm going to continue, so thank you.
Through the chair, there's a couple of things I did want to let council know. It feels like, well, this is a question maybe, it feels like the concerns of council really center strongly on traffic and housing. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, you know, and
Because the reason why I'm saying that is we can continue to do more of these sessions to bring you up to speed and to focus in a little bit more on the specifics of, especially probably traffic, because we haven't talked as much about that, but just a question, would that help you? And then second of all, I did want to let folks know that the affordable housing plan does go through the housing subcommittee, and we did have an initial kind of conversation, so there will be, you know, meetings, talking about that will also occur at the subcommittee level.
So I don't know for the rest of the council, and I know Councilmember Caldera is not here, but obviously housing is obviously something that the council is concerned about. You know, I know there has been some discussion on traffic, but I think and I'll speak on some of the other items that are concerned for me is really looking at and addressing the comprehensive infrastructure financing plan, right? And how we want to make sure that we're not burdening our future homeowners and how that's gonna look. And so I know that's in the work, but being able to look at what is a comprehensive financial plan for the infrastructure piece and then the development agreement, and I can touch more on that when I speak, but those are some of the things that I think are really important to be as we're moving forward, because those are the things that we do have some control over now, as opposed to some of the things that already have been approved. And how do we move forward to make sure that some of this we get our feedback in there? So and I'll wait, I'll reserve my comments for later, but I just want to make sure it's not just housing and traffic, because that's not the only thing that maybe we need to be looking at.
No, I probably didn't say it right. I think, we're gonna, you know, we're working on all these technical studies and they're very complicated, so it's just, I mean, it sounds like maybe something about the financing plan would also be important, but it might be easier to get into some of the details point by point. So I don't know if that, but maybe if you guys can speak about what kind of study sessions would be helpful.
And through the chair, if I may just add, it's, to me, it's frustrating because our residents think that we're making these decisions, but as, you know, Mayor Velasquez mentioned, it's the outzoning, you know, we have to LAFCO, you know, we have other outside organizations that are helping us, and even with the numbers, the 20%, you know, it's not us deciding, it's the other developers and, you know, other agencies that, you know, we're working with. You know, these are just the numbers that they're presenting to us, and of course, we want to have a say in it. But of course, it's the perception of not us, but it's just more the residents. You know, me personally want to get them involved to make them understand more the behind the scenes, what we do, and, you know, all these hard decisions that we have to make, you know, and it's.
And then point of information, adding on to what Councilwoman Manolo said, this was adopted before 4/5 of us were on here.
Yes.
Not putting it on the mayor, because the mayor did say that she dissented. So just also for the public to know is that this is something, when something happens, it moves forward, and that's it. Whether we like it or not, this is our job, we have to move forward. Even if we don't completely agree, this is why we're here, this is why we're engaging, and we're asking questions and getting questions answered, but a lot of the times we're here and you see us up here. And it's like, why are you doing this? Well, it's like, well, this is what we inherited, right? And to Councilwoman Manolo's point is, it is a little bit frustrating, but we are moving forward, and that's something that just has to happen.
Yeah, so let's continue. So I'm gonna move on, if you don't have any additional comments, because I think there is, I mean, Megan did ask about future study sessions and what we can do, and I think there is an opportunity for engagement and those things that we already know that we can control, or things that we do have feedback on. So I want to make sure we don't lose track of that either, that not everything has been approved. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I think there's a lot of information, and I don't wanna keep going on with Councilmember Cabrera, let me say. Pañuelos said, but I do believe, I also feel frustrated, and I'm gonna tell you what, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. But I would like to see things that I can change. You know, cause if I'm gonna go over 20 slides in which I don't have anything to say, then I don't see the point of having a public meeting for that. I think that could be a report for us, because if I'm not gonna make any suggestions, if I'm not able to make any suggestions to change, then I don't see that purpose. I do see the purpose in reading and understanding, but it's a different point of view when you have information that you can digest and see what happened and understand what's going on and how the project is gonna proceed. And another thing is to say, look, this is what you can do. This is the things in which you actually have an opinion on. I know, and I saw, just if you don't see it, in that report says that the mayor was the only, what was the word that you used? Dissenting voice. None of those council members are here, and the project is signed by former Mayor Ledesma. So when I saw that, it's just, okay, so we're going back to the same thing. I'm not gonna be able to say anything. I'm not gonna be able to make suggestions. We're not gonna see any change. So, And again, it's not your fault, that's not, I'm not saying that to make you feel uncomfortable, but I don't see the point of doing this. If I'm not gonna have any suggestions or anything, I don't see the point.
Sorry, I don't know if you want me to answer it or.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem for that. And I just want to point out, and I understand that because I know it's frustrating. It has been a little bit frustrating, but I just kind of want to reemphasize why we wanted to have the workshop. So one is because we wanted to make sure that the council that is now sitting here, and as you pointed out, there's a lot of the council that is not here anymore, but the council that is here now, that it's important to have the background and the history, because we will be making some critical decisions coming up. And as you saw on page 11 of your packet, under the Miramonte Development Agreement, the deal points, final approvals, we still have, the council still has very significant the decisions that we sitting at this council, if these come in the timeline that we're here, whether it's 2 years or 4 years, these are your deal points, right? So I like the way they call them. It's our deal points. And so we do still have deal points that we can do. So it is a matter of, there's some deal points that unfortunately we can't control. They're done, right? But we do have some that we can. And I think that's the important piece, is to look at this and figure out from this now moving forward, what can we do? But I think for today, it was really a matter of making sure everybody was up to speed on what had happened and where we're at now currently and where we're moving forward, because I think that's really important. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it to anything else? No. So with that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Gonzalez Sanchez.
Yes, before I start, I do want to just say thank you, of course. I know, I want to kind of reiterate that we are thankful that you're here, and I, speaking for myself, I'm very excited by our staff always, and I just want to make sure that I make that clear. I don't know where to start again, but one thing that I am excited about is parks and stuff, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that and how that's going to work. And I think that in the presentation, that's something that we could engage with a little bit more. So that's something that I'm definitely interested in thinking about. I think public spaces are really important, not just for, you know, our youth, but for everybody, for our seniors. And I think that's something that I want to definitely engage a lot in. I have a quick question about, I'm horrible at maps, I'm sorry. I'm still a little bit confused with the phasing. I know that the phase 2 has the very low, moderate, and above moderate. And in looking at the map, where the multi-housing is, I see something that says senior inclusionary. And I can't make out the.
Yeah, that might be the senior housing project.
And then is that project only housing seniors, or is that gonna be like an 80-20, 90-10 split? How is that gonna work?
It would be a senior housing project, because the reason why I say that is, remember, I kind of brushed through quickly the environmental impact report. But when they are looking at this, they're also looking at traffic. And so certain populations are have low trip numbers. So whether or not that can be flexed into other things, we'd have to dig a little bit into the environmental. I don't know if Ron's system is online, but I don't
And I
know.
believe it's also part of the specific plan as a requirement for senior housing.
Yeah.
So it would check that box under the specific plan and the way that.
I think we wanted to make sure that there was senior housing units.
Yes, definitely. I think that's important. I think my question comes because it does have, like, that's the only multi that I see that is part of phase 2. So that would mean then that the affordable housing would only, we're only considering that senior housing as the very low.
No, I think there's some additional units, yes, probably on the low, very low. But there are some moderate units that also come online through the ownership housing.
Okay.
And the phasing and all that will be through the affordable housing agreement as well. And there will be more explained throughout that affordable housing.
Okay, And then I am curious about the funding and how it kind of, that was like my first question, I think. Coming in today is just like, how does it get off the ground? Who pays for it? How do we pay for it? Is it feasible? When are we breaking ground? Can we afford to break ground? You know what I mean? So.
I think that would be really helpful because I think it's important to understand what the upfront costs are. You know, like when you are developing land like this, there's all the infrastructure that the developer has to put in. Obviously the parks, you know, so it might be helpful just to kind of understand that. And there's a delicate balance too, because, you know, of course, we want more affordable housing, but the deeper the affordability, the more expensive all of the other houses become. So, you know, maybe the house that is the market rate house that was 600, now that you have to subsidize at the higher affordability levels, maybe it makes it 700,000, you know? So it is kind of a delicate balance, and I think it would be helpful for you all to understand that as a, you know, as a decision point, because, and then we as a city have to think about our costs, and that's part of the financing plan to make sure that we are not, as the mayor had kind of indicated, that we're not gonna be sunk with a development, that the part of the development agreement is making sure that the developer is paying their fair share, so it doesn't cost the city a bunch more money. So I think financing is both the financing plan, but just housing financing would be very helpful.
And then I have another question that is actually with this like packet that we received. What does it mean 58% in the specific plan areas be affordable by design? I don't really get that.
I think, we probably could respond to that. We want to make sure that we're responding to it because it's potentially future litigation. I want to be a little bit cautious, and it's probably something that we should maybe even, work out and coordinate with Mike, but we can respond to that.
Okay. Sounds good, and then this is kind of on the side of Miramonte. But I know that Angelica brought something up about the affordable housing, and then you answered it by reminding us about 540 Gavilan and Santa Clara, and I think maybe as we're like getting towards that, having a little bit more community engagement with that, so that the public's aware that this isn't the only housing that we're working on, we're working on other housing as well. That way folks know to look forward to everything, and that this isn't the only thing that we're doing.
That's a really good point. I think we can do a lot more engagement. So.
Yeah, or even, we can think about the format, but I do think that we have a good pipeline, a diverse pipeline. I haven't seen a pipeline like the one that we have in other cities. I don't think our residents are aware, but maybe we can identify a time where we can think about the format of that meeting. Because yes, every housing project we want to provide affordable housing, but also one housing project is not gonna solve all of our issues, right? So we have to look at it more comprehensively with projects and programs, because some of those projects need the support of programs so that we can actually get people into the right housing, and we can provide the support that they need to be successful in their housing path. So I think we can get direction, I don't know if at a different time, but it may be good for public perception that they understand that this is not the only project, that we have several projects and where we're at with each of those projects.
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna get direction, because I think that's one of the comments of the hand.
I just want to be, sorry, Mayor, I just want to be conscious of how we listed it on the agenda. And I think we should confer with Mike, because it was more of an information
No
session.
formal council action will be taken.
Yeah, so I just want to be cognizant. I don't know if Mike is still on the line, but
Yeah, so I don't think we're taking any formal action. I think it's recommendations, right? So Mike, can you confirm that, I mean, if we make recommendations tonight, it's not action.
No, this was really meant just as an educational piece, really, and so we really shouldn't be taking directions or recommendations other than recommendations for subsequent meetings on specific issues or another presentation and so forth and so on. But I think that we need to stay away from providing recommendation. It really was agendized basically as just an informational meeting and questions about the information that was provided to you.
Okay, so we can still address questions, so we're just, if we have questions, we're addressing questions. But in terms of, educational piece, but we can say what we want in terms of future meetings for this, because I do agree, and I know, I wish there would have been more people here, that it wouldn't have been a 24-hour notice thing. You know, that we would have had more time to do it differently, and maybe it's not in this, maybe it's not something like this, maybe when we do another workshop, it could be a different setting. So thank you, Mike, for that. We'll talk about that. We do want something in the future, but it's separate. Something different than this kind of setting, because we don't have community input in this kind of venue if we don't have outreach.
Yeah, and I think for the purpose for this one in particular is because we have a lot of new council members and we want to make sure that we bring you to the same page as much as possible, that we understand that there are things that we cannot change at this point, but that having the right background information and knowing where the project stands, that you still have influence on how the project will unveil. And that was the purpose it was mainly for council, to be able to make decisions and to understand the process moving forward, so that you don't feel like you don't have a say, but it's more that you know where your input can be really transferred into decisions. But we can, and it can even be at one of our next council meetings, some of the items we're presenting soon, the annual progress report for the housing element and for the general plan. So there might be opportunities in other meetings.
That's correct. I mean, don't forget, this project's fairly old. We had tons of community input as the other documents that we've referenced today that have already been approved. We had tons of community input at the time that those documents were considered and approved. And we still have quite a few items, as I think staff's pointed out, that where community input will be provided and so forth. I think this was just an attempt on the part of staff to make sure that we had a baseline of information that we were all working from, so that you can provide guidance, input, direction, ask questions and so forth as these other items that are coming before you, that will really be sort of the implementation items for the previous documents that have been approved.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so you have anything else?
Yeah, it's like, I get it, it's just like trying to balance, like, this is why I was elected, right, to be sitting here, but then it's like, you know, the public might still be like, oh, you guys are building this, why are you doing this? And it's like, right, so it's just like that piece that's, I guess, a little frustrating, but, you know, we're here, and we'll get there. Thank you. Good.
Thank you. So mine is the last, and then after that, I think we'll conclude with the presentation. So I want to start off just by saying thank you again. I know the intention, it's, you know, I know it's long, I know it's a lot of information. For some of us, it's not new. So, you know, I wanted to make sure that everybody was up to speed and everybody had the background, because it is a very, as I said again, and I'll say it again, that it's a very critical project to the growth of the city. But I'm gonna make some comments, and just, these are some comments, and then I'll just, you know, make my questions within my comments. But just in terms of the follow-up from Mayor Pro Tem about some of the issues with the phasing of the 1 and 2, and I know that obviously that's just, you know, what we can do or not. And I do want to point out, though, that, you know, one of the things that for me is really important, that we ensure that the project moves forward with compliance with what's in our general plan and our housing element, and concurrency in building affordable and market rate housing is language in our document. So I don't want to forget that that is in there. And that if it's not in one of those phases, is how do we look to make sure that we are doing that? And if we can't do it, then how are we balancing our compliance with our documents? And then my other comment is also, I was part of a housing presentation last year with Cal Cities. And I get it, and I work for the housing department, so I totally understand how complex the financing is. But I also know that there's other models that we can explore. There's people in Southern California that are looking at different types of housing that can be produced at a much cheaper, well, I shouldn't say cheaper, because they're still using good quality construction material, but that can be produced at a lesser expense, more cost efficient, thank you. And that I think we continue to look at the same type of models that don't give us a result that we need. So I would really encourage our team and even ourselves as council members to really look at other models in other cities that are really working. I think I shared with Megan and the council some other models that I received information from, to be able to look at how do we support the developer to meet the compliance with the affordable housing, but that doesn't continue to be the same type of housing that is really expensive and we can't build until 5 to 6 years from now, right? Because the financing is so complex. And then just, I think it was said already in terms of the outreach, just wanting to make sure as we move forward, how do we present to the community workshops so they can understand where we're at, and so it could be more of a fruitful discussion and our community knows, how we're moving forward with this and what we can and cannot do. But I would like to also, I know part of the letter, we're gonna respond to it, but there was also a public comment in terms of the Monterey County Board of Supervisors going forward with a committee, formed a separate committee for the Garrison project. And maybe this is something we need to research individually, but is that a possibility? We have the ad hoc housing committee, but is there another structure that can give us more participation or engagement, especially as we move into the deal points that we do have that are pretty significant in terms of the development agreements and moving forward with some of that. And so, and I know it's not now, but I do want to make a comment in terms of the neighborhoods that, and looking at other neighborhoods as we're building, I think it's really important to remember that we can build, we have the opportunity to build amazing neighborhoods. If you look at neighborhoods in Salinas, I looked at neighborhoods in Carlsbad, and they have, they have character, right? Like, we don't have to build the same kind of housing that we built in the city of Soledad. That this can really provide us with an opportunity to be creative and build a different city that, really is, we talk about who we are as a city and who we want to be. That really is the city that Soledad wants to be for the next 50 to 100 years. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we're looking at some things that we think we don't have control over, but we really do, right? And then, confirming, I just want to confirm because they said that the phasing has not been locked in. So in the development agreement, the phasing has been, so we haven't locked in the different phases.
Well, some of the phasing is monitored through mitigation monitoring program, depending on the development of the project. So that has to do a lot with it. So it's established preliminary, but I think there's some flexibility when it comes to implementation of that development site itself. But for the most part, we have to comply with the mitigation monitoring program for specific phases of the development.
Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying that. And then just for me, again, as we're moving forward with the development impact fees, the financial plan is really important because I know we have the MAD and BAD and all these different things that we've had for our newer developments. And as we move forward, we want to make sure that our homeowners, our future homeowners are not financially burdened, right? For as they buy these homes. And so I think that's important. And then my last is okay, I already said that I was looking at other developments. And And I'll just say this for our RENA numbers, because I know that in the last RENA numbers, and I had heartaches with this. Because in the last RENA numbers that we had in our last responsibility for those, the city didn't meet its low and very low income. We did meet a lot of our above moderate and above moderate. So I think for me, it's really important that as we move forward, that we really ensure that we're meeting some of these lower and lower income unit affordable, because we didn't do that in the last cycles of RENA, and that was something that was important to our community. And staying true to that, right? So, and just in kind of future, I would like to see as we move forward, you know, what was said is just recommendations to be able to have more opportunities for the community to give input in the process where they can. And the council to understand more of the deal points of where we can be involved. And we have the subcommittee ad hoc, but is there an opportunity to create another Miramonte separate committee to be able to just really look at, because it's so complex. And I understand that, but is there an opportunity to create something similar to what the Monterey County Board of Supervisors had for their development?
So, negotiations are very challenging because they need to be, there's a lot of technical work and they need to be confidential, but everything will come to you in an open session where you can provide, once we, you know, clearly, do the public hearing and so forth, that you will be able to provide that direction. You'll be able to look at these things in real detail. Right now, it's really in the weeds with technical studies and offsite improvements and traffic analysis. So all of this is going to come to you, and you will have an opportunity to, you know, modify, or, you know, if you want not in agreement with the development agreement. And we will be, like I said, we will be doing more study sessions to explain what is happening. So I want you to know, you are the drivers of this.
Through the chair, please don't take it personally. I really appreciate all the work that you do, because I know that you guys do a lot of work. And I wanna thank you for all the information that you provided for us. But I do see, like, because I know that you have the knowledge, I think that I will appreciate if you give us like points of references in that kind of information that we need to understand completely, so that when you present reports like that or presentations like that, we understand what is going on. And let me tell you what, for instance, we have the RENA requirements. Maybe some of us don't know what the RENA requirements are, so what is it? So I think it is valuable for us that you can not give us a presentation if it's not necessary, but provide us with information so that we can understand what the RENA requirements are. Also, like the development agreement, I know that is the portion that we might have some impact. So a recommendation is like, look, I'm gonna recommend this side or this piece of information so that we can read it and understand it. And the way that when you present it, then we understand what you're saying. But sometimes I get confused in that, especially when you mention, what do they call it? When you only say the letters.
Yeah.
The acronyms, so sometimes the acronyms, I get lost in the acronyms, not just because I don't know what it is, but because I don't know the whole information about it. And I think it will be more effective if we know, and if we know that in advance, so that when you come and present, we fully understand it. Probably not everything that you're gonna say, but it will be in our benefit to have that information.
I think what we learned is probably, we wanted to give everyone kind of it's like we gave you a water from a fire hose, right, today? But now I think we can slow down and go bit by bit by bit, because it is overwhelming, and thank you for telling us we use too much acronyms. We'll try to speak a little more clear. Like I said,
You want to.
Ariana and I are
Council
planning.
member.
Yeah. So-
Be like AMBAG and send us 120 acronyms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you for knowing that. Mayor Pro Tem, I know and I know for some of us, it's easy for me to say Rena because I understand that, but I understand that it's not that easy. It's, government has a bunch of acronyms, that we work with. So thank you for clarifying that. So I really appreciate that. And I think for me, my last comment is, because I've been part of this for a longer period of time, and I've gone through the LAFCO process, I've gone through, since 2018. And again, I just want to thank you, but I also want to say, for me, I was told, look, there's a lot of things that were already done, but where you have more of a say as a council is in the development portion of it. So I really want to make sure that we understand what we do have, as Megan said, where we can come in and provide the feedback, and when it comes back to us, I just don't want it to be where the development agreement comes to us and we have it here where we've had no opportunity to be able to say, what about if we do this? Can we provide, opinions on it before it gets to a point where city staff and the developer have been in negotiations? By the time it gets to us, it seems like it's not feasible. That's my concern. And so I just want to make sure that I'm vocal about where I'm at, only because of where I've been. So thank you. Any final thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say, also thank you to Ron, Don, Lane, for that input too. I appreciate you guys, partnering up and collaborating and just, dissecting all the analytical stuff, all the logistics that comes with it too. And thank you guys for I'm just amazed by you guys. I appreciate your time.
Through the chair, I just wanted to, in the public, make this announcement that Councilmember Caldera's birthday was today, and he had plans with his family, and he did indicate that he couldn't come tonight, but he came anyhow because he did want to learn. So the reason why he's not here is because of that, but we'll make sure we can touch base with him on what he might have missed.
Yeah, and it would have been nice to know, because I didn't know that, so next time just let me know, because I think I failed to at least say happy birthday to him while he's here.
Yeah, I think
Or expect some food from him.
I know, we should have had cake, right?
You don't want us to know.
No,
Yeah,
no
I
cake
made
without
that
me.
that
No
was-
cake without me, so.
Okay, so with that, council, then if there's no further comments, then I will close this meeting. I will adjourn this